Why are you guys anywhere?
We're sort of a club.
Yeah, the Losers Club.
You want in?
Yeah, I do.
Hey, we're 7 now. Lucky 7. I want to kill it.
I just want to forget about it.
It's not just us. It's all the other kids, too. Who's gonna be next?
It kills kids, damn it.
You killed my brother George, you bastard! Let's see you now.
Maybe it's the water.
Water. Maybe it's the sewer.
Hi, Georgie.
You're not real! You're not real!
Was it Pennywise?
Big white guy, red nose, about 75 feet tall, mouth full of razor-sharp teeth.
You smell that? It's death. Losers fight it. Losers die.
Thanks for tuning in to FHMP Flashback Horror Movie Podcast. This is your host, the Prime Minister of Sinister, Don Nice. And with me, as always, you guys should be ready for this, is the Pajama Pants, wait for it, playa, John Grande. What's going on, John? How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing fantabulous, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. It's Friday. It's beautiful outside. Finally, it's been pretty yucky here the last few days in wild and wonderful Ohio. What about you, man? What's going on with you?
Everything's going good. Through 2 weeks of school, everything's going pretty swimmingly, as they say. I'm in a creative writing class. Had to write a poem.
Nice.
I think I did pretty well with it. I have to present it Tuesday. We have to stand in front of the class, read our poetry.
Nice,
and
nice.
Then the class critiques me. So I'm super excited for that. Yeah. It should be a lot of fun. Yeah, I take a lot of English classes, being a PCM major and all.
Sure.
It's definitely it's good for me because it's challenging and it's fun at the same time.
Always nervous getting up in front of people like that. I mean, maybe people like me and you, it's not that big of a deal, but for a lot of people, that's kind of debilitating, huh?
Yeah, I don't know why. I know public speaking is a big fear with people, but I don't get why, man. That wouldn't scare me at all. As long as it's something I'm passionate about too. Like if somebody said, get up in front of a bunch of people and talk about something you're passionate about.
Sure.
I mean, Jesus Christ, I could do it easily. There's no problem at all. I don't get nervous when I look at a big crowd of people. I actually think it's more nerve-wracking to do it in front of a few. Like I remember a few years back when I was in high school, my friend Jonathan and I were sitting in homeroom, and they put on the announcements, talent show in 2 months. And I looked at him, I said, neither one of us have any musical talent, but we should try to get in. We should go to the audition.
See what happens.
And he was like, what? He's like, no way. And I was like, come on, we'll nail it, I promise. And he goes, all right, well, what are we going to sing? We have to sing something completely gay and hilarious. And I was like, okay. So I came up with singing the song Breaking Free. High School Musical.
Nice.
And we practiced it at his place every day after school for like 2 weeks.
Right.
And then we ended up going to the audition, and it was like 3 or 4 people in this like weird back band room that I'd never seen before in my high school. And we did it, and I was actually a little nervous because it was only 4 people, and it was quiet in the room, and it was a big room. It was just, I don't know what it was. It was kind of like, wow, this is so, it's so small. But we nailed it, and we ended up getting into the talent show.
Awesome,
So it was pretty funny shit.
Yeah, I grew up in a singing family, so from the age of 10, I mean, I've stood in front of 10 people and sang, and I've stood in front of close to 1,000 people and sang. So yeah, it was never really an issue. And I guess you get a little bit nervous, but I mean, it's more of an excited nervous, than it is more a scared nervous. But yeah, it's been a long time since I've done anything like that. But that's one of the reasons I enjoy doing this show. So. But
it's the challenge that keeps you going. It's the challenge of can I do this? And then when that sense of accomplishment, it's just such a good high, man.
It sure is. So the week is finally here. I know a lot of people were excited. Some people not so excited for the It remake, and that's why we're going to talk about the original miniseries from miniseries. It was only 2 nights. I guess you still call it a miniseries from 1990. You and I were talking a little bit. I think we're both going to check it out tonight. Obviously not together since you're in New York and I'm in Ohio. But yeah, I think we're both going to go check it out tonight. Are you pretty stoked for it?
I am pretty stoked for it. I've heard good things. That doesn't always necessarily mean that I like it, but I honestly think it's from what I've heard about the differences. I'm very intrigued to see what they do and how it's executed. I'm very optimistic going in tonight.
Me too. I haven't heard much bad about people who've actually have gone and seen it. Obviously, there are some people out there who just hate on it because it's a remake. Which, listen, I kind of get. I feel that way about some movies also, but this one I think looks pretty good. And I'm not familiar. I'm familiar, but I've never read the novel. How about you?
I have read some of the novel. There's certain scenes that are a lot more graphic, and there is like a I don't even know how to, like a gang, like like a gangbang scene. I don't even know how to explain how fucked up it is.
Oh man!
It's basically all the children are like in this sewer pipe. But it's bigger, like they're all crawling through it.
Right.
And they figure that they'll all be stronger if they all have sex with the one girl character in the movie.
My, really?
Or in the book. Yeah, and it's fucked up. Yeah, look it up, man. It's some really, like, I remember that's where I stopped. I was like, okay, this is a little too much for me.
Good old Stephen King.
I was like, Stephen King is a fucked up son of a bitch.
Yeah,
man.
well, yeah, you got to be writing all those movies. So I know you and I have talked about this, but the listeners haven't heard a whole lot. What's your thoughts on the original, and when did you see it? How old were you when you saw this, if you remember, that is?
Oof. That's a good question. I don't know when I saw this movie first. I just rewatched it this past week. So that's easily my freshest viewing. I think I was probably younger. I would think, 9 or 10 maybe. I'm not positive, but
sure.
I remember always having fond memories of the first half of this movie.
Right.
And thinking to myself, like, this is almost like the Stand By Me horror movie.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I loved even then, the kid actors are the star of this movie. And as great as Tim Curry is, as Pennywise, and even I think some of the adult actors do a good job. John Ritter does a good job.
Absolutely.
But I think the star of this movie are those kid actors, man. They're all fantastic. They do such a good job. And I think Pennywise is just one of the great horror antagonists of all time, with some great one-liners that to this day are still, memorable. And I've seen memes all week, and I've seen shirts. I even have my shirt, the shirt where he's looking at you and it says "They all float down here."
Right.
I have very fond memories of the first half of the film. But how about you, man?
Yeah, I was 18 when this came on TV. So that'll give you an idea about kind of where I was at. It was my senior year of high school. Came out in November, and I just turned 18 in October. And I have to say, I really enjoyed it. Again, being the fact that I actually never read the novel. I think that didn't taint my view on the movie or the miniseries, and I think it probably did for a lot of people. It probably I know it pissed a lot of people off, but we didn't have anything back then to kind of talk about our distaste for these things because there was no internet or anything like that, so it was kind of a localized thing for me. And the town that this movie takes place in kind of reminds me of my hometown. You know what I mean? So I have a little bit of nostalgia there, but I have to be honest with you. I really like this movie a lot, and I watched it, or most of it, again yesterday, and I have to tell you, I like it more now than I did then, and maybe I was thinking about why there's a lot of hate, and I think now the reason that it is means a little bit more to me now is because I'm a little bit older, so I can recognize the nuances between the kids and the adults. Before, it was really all about the kids, only because I was a kid. You know what I mean? So I kind of identified more with them, obviously. But now that I'm older, probably about the same age or a little bit older than the adult characters were supposed to be in this story, I enjoyed the second half a lot more than I remember enjoying it before. So without getting into too much detail, we'll get into it here. But are you a fan of Tommy Lee Wallace? The director, he's the guy that directed this movie. I'm sure you know who Tommy Lee Wallace is. But I'm sure some people out there don't.
I actually, one of the few movies that has eluded me, just similar to Eaten Alive that we were talking about in the last episode, is Fright Night Part 2.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because it's been out of print for so long, and DVD goes for just stupid money. I've never wanted to pay it. And I've never really bothered to look up a stream. I'm sure I could stream it easily online for free, but
it's available on YouTube.
That's one that has eluded me, and I've always wanted to see it. I've heard it's nowhere near, as good or memorable, but that's definitely down the road one I really want to see. But yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Halloween Season of the Witch.
Yeah. Another polarizing movie.
Wallace.
Yeah, another polarizing movie with Halloween 3, huh? A lot of people hate that
definitely,
movie.
But I think it's a really good movie, personally.
Yeah, you and I both. We both are fans of that movie. So, but we'll get into that at another time in another episode because I think it's definitely worth getting into. But yeah, I like Tommy Lee Wallace. For those who don't know, he was a production designer on Halloween and The Fog. He directed, obviously, Halloween 3, Fright Night 2. Didn't he direct one of the vampire movies, I believe, the one with Bon Jovi, the one with Bon Jovi in it? I really feel like he didn't really have a lot of opportunity. I'm not sure what he would have done with, more quality of a film. What do you think?
I think, he's one of those guys that I think did get some opportunities, and I think he took advantage of most of them. I mean, shit, this movie is really, I think it is one of the most memorable Stephen King movies, easily. I agree. Always mentioned. It's never lost among people that watch and love horror movies.
That's true.
It's a very memorable movie, and I don't know. I honestly think there's a main reason as to why that is, and it is Tim Curry as Pennywise.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Tommy Lee Wallace honestly never really got the break to make his own standalone movie. You know what I mean?
Yep, that's what I was thinking,
Halloween 3 was more Carpenter's movie, because Carpenter wrote the story and Carpenter wanted it to have a certain feel to it.
Right.
Or did Tommy Lee Wallace, who wrote Halloween 3?
Who wrote it?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Let me look here real quick.
I have to look up too.
It actually says he wrote it. Tommy Lee Wallace wrote it.
Oh, okay. Tommy Lee Wallace did write it. Yeah. Okay, well, that makes me think of him as more of a creative genius. Right. Okay, maybe he did get to make the movie he wanted to make, but the movie he wanted to make didn't make any money,
right?
Which was a damn shame because it should have.
Oh,
it was
absolutely.
More of the title that discouraged him than anything else, but I think he's a pretty good filmmaker.
Yeah, I do too. Like I said, I really think, man, I was thinking about how this movie had to be made, okay, and I was thinking about how he had to put 1,130 some pages into a 3-hour miniseries. You know what I mean? And I'm like, damn, he had to. There were 15 main characters in this movie. That's unbelievable. That just doesn't happen. You know what I mean? I mean, 15 if including the adults and the children, same character, but you also had Pennywise. You know what I mean? So I was thinking about how hard this had to have been, and I do know that that did you tell me last episode that George Romero was originally scheduled to direct this movie?
No, he was originally scheduled to direct Pet Sematary.
Okay, actually, he was actually attached to this at one time too, if you can believe that. Originally.
Oh, I never heard that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how he would have done. I'm sure he would have done a bang up job, but I just thought that was pretty interesting. But what happened was, I guess ABC, they were all gung ho about this, and they said, you know what, we're going to make it a 8 to 10 hour miniseries. It'll be over like 4 or 5 nights for 2 hours, blah blah blah. Well, they kind of got cold feet. You know what I mean? Because of and I'm sure that scene that you were talking about may have had something to do with that, because Stephen King is a pretty messed up guy. He had some messed up stuff in his book, so they got some cold feet. So they, and at that point, George Romero said, "Well, look, I'm going to go do another movie. If you guys don't want to do this, then I'm going to do something else." So they had to bring in Tommy Lee Wallace, and they knocked it down to 4 hours, which that's including commercials. So it's pretty interesting that another great that we were just talking about recently was actually attached to do this movie at one time, and I would have liked to have seen that that 8 or 10 hour miniseries. I think that they really could have done something else, and it may have taken it to another level. What do you think?
I think definitely, and especially with Romero at the helm,
Right.
That would have been very interesting to see. Same thing with, I think, Pet Sematary. I
Sure.
think as good as Pet Sematary is, it would have been interesting to see what George Romero would have done with it. I think Mary Lambert did a great job, but I've always, you kind of wonder what would the Godfather of the Zombie have done with this movie. Hey, maybe it would have been worse. I don't know. I'm not saying it definitely would have been better, but I don't know. It's definitely one of those things where we can kind of wonder about and ponder, would it have been better? It's a cool topic for conversation.
Yeah. So thinking about this film and thinking about we'll talk about the kids first. What did you think about the acting from the kids in this movie? I thought it was pretty good. What'd you think?
I think it's amazing. I think it's the standout thing in this movie. I think almost all of them just do such a good job. I mean, starting with Jonathan Brandis, who sadly committed suicide a few years back, and may he rest in peace, because he really was a talented actor.
He was,
and it was. I was really. I remember when I heard. I was really sad, because I remember watching Neverending Story Part 2.
Oh, wow.
Growing up. Which is a really bad movie for anybody that's it's actually really bad. And then the third one's even worse. But I always had fond memories of the first one. And then I remember renting the second one and saying, like, oh, man, this is terrible. But the kid from It was in it, who was Jonathan Brandis, who was like a big child star. And then he just kind of didn't pan out when, he grew up. But, yeah, he did a good job. I like my favorite actor in this movie. I don't know his name off the top of my head, but he played the fatter kid.
His name's Brandon Crane.
Brandon Crane, okay. Yeah, but he played Ben. He was easily my favorite actor in the entire movie. I thought he was just so good in his role. I liked that he was, trying to read poetry to his girlfriend, or trying to read poetry to the girl.
Oh, yeah.
And he would hide. I liked that he realized that Jonathan Brandis and the Beverly character were really kind of hitting it off romantically. And he liked her, but he realized, there's a point where they both say goodbye to each other, and she blows a kiss to him, and they go their separate ways, and you could see on Brandon Crane's face that, he realizes, he just goes, all right, man, she's not into me, she digs him, but he doesn't say anything, it's just facial expression, it's just like that, I accept this, and I love that stuff, because I can relate, that's happened how many times in my life, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I think it's so real, and I think it really helps this movie to have something as real as that, because it's not, it's just, I don't know, I think something about that genuine kind of shrug and whatnot, but I think all these kids had good chemistry. I mean, Seth Green is really good in it.
Yeah, no, not crazy.
Marlon Taylor's really good in it as Mike Hanlon. I think a lot of these kids do a really, really good job. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, Jonathan Brandis, obviously, he did a really good job. But I'm kind of in agreement with you. I think that the character of Ben Hanscom, obviously I grew up kind of the chubby kid, and all that good stuff.
Oh, same here.
Yeah, so you know what I mean? So it was like, I had a lot of those things happen to me too. So he's probably my favorite character in this. But I think, the kid who plays Eddie, what's his name? Adam Frazel? I'm not sure how you say his name. I thought he was really good. I thought he played a really good, I don't want to say a wimpy kid, but you know what I mean, a mama's boy, whatever you want to call it. And Emily Perkins played Beverly Marsh, and like you said, Marlon Taylor, Seth Green. Ben Heller, who played Stan. I really, really thought that they did a really good job in this movie. And this is what I really feel like this is Stephen King's strong suit. You know what I mean? Is these Stand By Me, type of movies where he brings these characters together and makes you care about them, and as they start to care about each other. And that's one of the things that I really love about the beginning of this movie. And I have to say too is I really love the dude that played Henry Bowers, Jared Blankard, I believe his name is, or something like that. I really liked him too. You know what I mean? He played a really good bad guy. And I think, and I say bad guy. He's not really the antagonist in this movie, but he's the I guess the one thing in this world that is antagonizing them. So I really thought he did a good job too. And I thought he played a really good guy that you like to hate. So I again, all the way across the board, I thought they really, really did a good job. I can say that. I didn't have friends like this. You know what I mean? I had some good friends. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't have friends that that I think would have. I don't know if they would have tried to battle the neighborhood bad dog, let alone what I mean, let alone something this deep and this dark. So that again, I think that really is what brought me into this movie and what really made me love this movie to begin with. So, but I guess we should move on to talk about the adults. Can you imagine?
No, actually, I'd
go
like
ahead.
to
I'm
make
sorry.
one more point on the kids. I think it's amazing that I think that this being a miniseries really helped us out too. Is the fact that they're able to develop each kid character.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of time devoted to each one. It's like they literally take individual time to go, okay, this is Bev, this is Ben,
right.
This is, like they keep going down the line and telling you, like, about their home life.
Absolutely.
Like each one of them, I could tell you so much about. And I think that's a really big plus when you're doing a horror film like this,
yes, yeah.
Because you care about everybody. There's no throwaway character. You care about Ben as much as you care about Jonathan Brandis' character Bill, and even though Bill is probably more of a primary character in the first part, it doesn't matter because I could identify with somebody else, and I thought Seth Green was very funny,
Absolutely.
and I think they all had such a prominent kind of factor and role, and they had the time to develop that. That's something that really is lacking with horror films now, and I really hope to see in the remake tonight.
Yeah, me too. One of the things about that, I think that they found that Tommy Lee Wallace found that a super, super important part of the story. Important part of the story, which as well he should. But in the long run, I think it may have hurt this movie in people who have read the book's mind. You know what I'm saying? Because they spend a lot of time, which for you and I who weren't too familiar with the book, it works for us. But the other people, I think that it may have hurt them because they wanted to see more of Pennywise as the different entities and things like that. But you only got so much time, you only got so much money, and with this adult cast that they brought in, I mean the salaries had to be pretty high, you know what I mean? Because a lot of these people were pretty at the time. Maybe you would not know them now, young people, but back then, they probably asked for a lot of money and probably got it. You know what I mean? What do you think about that? Do you agree? See, we were talking about how it could have went 10 hours. I think 10 hours probably would have worked because of this. They could have done all the things that everybody wanted them to do. What do you think?
Well, I think had this come out now with a 10-hour, I think it would have been a big deal. It'd probably be on AMC. It'd probably be. Yeah. I bet you they'd cut it down to 1 hour and get 10 episodes out of it.
Right.
And they do something like that. So, I mean, yeah, I think it could have worked. I think that would have been, to me, more of a real mini-series, I guess, than what this really is. I mean, I just look at this as a 2-part movie. I don't even really look at this as a mini-series because it's part 1 and part 2.
Right, that's kind of the way I look at it.
But yeah, I think you're totally right. I mean, I could totally see what you're saying.
Yeah, and to think that I mean, John Ritter, he had a lot of success in the late 70s and early 80s, but as did Richard Thomas, who played Bill as an adult. They had a lot of success, so they had some recognition back then. I know they don't now, and I know it's a totally different thing, but I'm sure they paid these guys probably a pretty decent amount of money. And I guess the budget on this thing, first of all, was a 3-month shoot, and the budget was like $12 million, which, if you think about it, that's a halfway decent amount of money. But I'm sure a lot of it, again, because you have 15 main characters, a lot of that money probably went to those people, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, and they all have screen time, too. You can't really tell any of them, oh, you're a secondary character, when they're on screen for so long and being developed so well. So, you know, I'm sure money went into that.
Sure. But what did you think about the adults? Again, Richard Thomas, for those of you who don't know, was on the Waltons. He was John Boy on the Waltons, and obviously John Ritter, if anybody doesn't know him, he was on Three's Company, and 8 Simple Rules to Dating My Daughter, or whatever that was with Kaylee Cuoco. That's the TV show he was making when he died, actually. Also, Annette O'Toole, who was, a halfway decent name. And I don't want to forget about Olivia Hussey. Olivia Hussey had a pretty small part.
This.
Yeah, brings that back to the Black Christmas movie that we talked about a few episodes ago. But I thought these guys did a really good job too. What do you think? I thought they were fantastic.
I thought they did a good job. I think, especially going back on this rewatch, that they had a lot better chemistry than I remembered.
Yeah.
I think they clicked together,
sure.
like especially John Ritter and Annette O'Toole. I think they really were good together because you really bought, that he was still head over heels in love with her. And the fact that he was a little bit more, I guess, attractive now,
right?
But I think they did do a good job. I really do. I think they were all pretty good, and they all, kept what the kids' chemistry had. I think they kept it strong enough for it to work.
Yeah, I was thinking about the scene where Richard Thomas and Tim Reed, they fix up the old bike. If you remember that, you know what I mean?
So funny,
and as adults, they're supposed to be in their 40s, early 40s. They're riding this old bike around that has the bike has a decent size part in the story, where they use the bike to get away from Pennywise at times, and I really thought it was a shame that they tried to explain how there was more than just this one particular time that they talk about in this movie, that they all individually dealt with Pennywise, and they had to kind of gloss over it, like the story of Stan, when Stan had to deal with Pennywise one time on his own, and Bill, who again is Richard Thomas, is riding his bike down the street, and he sees Stanley running out of the woods, and he stops, and Stan hops on the back of the bike and says, "Go, go, go," because he's running from Pennywise. I really, really would have liked to have seen a little more of that. You know what I mean? And I understand that it was just 4 hours, and they had to, or really 3 hours. They had to get on with the story. But I really, really would have liked to have seen that. I really think that really would have, embedded the story a little bit more, at least in my mind, anyway. But
I think when it comes to that, I actually personally kind of enjoyed that we didn't see what happened to that character. But I think some of the other ones, especially the one in the shower, that's
Eddie, yeah.
Hey, that really holds up, and I think even the effects look very good. Like it's a very well shot scene. That one in the shower, man, that creeps me out to this day. That's a really, really good scene, and that iconic shot of him coming out of the kind of drainage thing. I just, oh man, it's just some great stuff, man.
Absolutely.
Like Tim Curry really is the reason why I think this movie is as memorable as it is. Wouldn't you think so?
Yeah, I absolutely think that. I got to tell you, the way, a lot of people think, this movie is not scary, and I've been reading a lot, obviously, on Facebook and things about people talking about this particular movie because of the new one coming out, obviously. But I don't understand the hate, man. I really don't understand it at all. And they couldn't do Pennywise in all of his iterations, you know what I mean? So they had to boil it down to one, and the one thing, and it should be in anybody's mind, that is the scariest of all those iterations is the clown. You know what I mean? So they had to stick with the clown thing. But, man, he knocks it out of the park, man. I absolutely love this performance, like we talked about in our top 10 performances. I love it. He is amazing, and it was the perfect storm. You know what I mean? It could have been anybody. As a matter of fact, there were 2 people cast to do this movie before him. I don't know if you know that or not.
I did not know that. Who were the 2?
The first one was Roddy McDowall.
Oh,
which
wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that would have went. And the second
I love
one,
Roddy, but
me too. Me too. Well, obviously, Fright Night, right? Which is pretty interesting. I'm sure that's where the connection came from with him.
And he'd worked with Tommy Lee Wallace on part 2 of Fright Night.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, I'm sure that had something to do with it. But the other person, and this is even weirder in my opinion, was Malcolm McDowell.
Oh, wow, really?
Yep. So, and I'm not sure, I never could find why it fell through. You know how Hollywood is. That shit just happens. They got another movie or something. But, yeah, that would have been pretty interesting. I'm not sure if it would have. There's no way. Anybody can argue with me till the cows come home. There's no way it could have been any better than what it was.
I agree. I think had Malcolm McDowell done it, it would have been the difference of, can you hit me a single or can you hit me a home run?
Right.
Like Tim Curry hit a home run. I think Malcolm McDowell would have pulled it off, but it wouldn't have been as good or as memorable. It just wouldn't have been. I think another actor could have pulled it off to the point where it was passable,
right.
But nobody could have done or portrayed that character like Tim Curry.
Right.
That's that, and a lot of people will argue with you, on that,
right.
and I don't get why, because they'll say, "Oh, anybody could have been, Jason. Anybody could have been, Pennywise." But like, it's at the end of the day, I think there are certain, guys that portray Jason that were better than others.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, yeah, it is a guy in a mask. I'm not gonna argue like crazy, but when it comes to a character like Freddy Krueger or Pennywise or Dracula, characters that speak in horror, I think it's a completely different kind of scenario. I think it's the guy that pulls it off, first normally is the guy that masters and
right.
perfects the role.
Right. Like you said, somebody else could have been passable and, but not anyone else could have been iconic. And
no way.
This guy is, this character for this guy, listen, he was good in everything he did. Don't get me wrong. But for me, this is the ultimate. And I have to tell you, watching this movie again, this man did this. He acted. This is going to sound weird. He acted so much with his face. You know what I'm saying? Like the way he curled his lip or said a word so that his mouth moved a certain way really, really made this character. You know what I mean? And listen, do I think that this movie is scary? Well, first of all, if you're an adult and you find a movie scary, I'm sorry, man. Hang it up, dude. I don't, you ain't seen enough of them, because I've seen it all. You know what I mean? So I don't get scared anymore. But I can tell you this, when I was 18 years old, this was pretty scary. I don't care what anybody says. That guy was scary. I would not have wanted to meet Pennywise, obviously. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, it was a very scary thing to me. And that's what bothers me. Is 20-year-old people or 25-year-old people who see it for the first time at 25 and go, well, that wasn't scary. Well, so you mean The Conjuring really scares you? Or, nothing scares you anymore. If it scares you, then there's something wrong with you. That's kind of the way I am. Maybe I've just seen too many movies. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I think there are some movies that to this day, I think give me chills. I mean, when I first saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I was shaking, man. I was like, this is a scary movie. But I think some of that holds up to this day. Like, and I think that it's still powerful and it can still be scary. I get what you're saying. Like, and I actually, being the movie watcher that I am, especially horror movie watcher, I've seen so much that it really is hard to get me, nervous and check doors and whatnot.
Right.
But I think somewhere deep down, I can still be very scared of horror movies, and I could still, I can kind of lean up and get into it. It's almost it's kind of weird. It's like a perverse high.
Right.
It's like it's a really I like it a lot. Like when I saw Insidious in the theaters with a few of my friends, like there are some really and I know people hate jump scares, but there are some crazy scary jump scares in that movie. And I remember walking out of that movie theater, I was like, man, like that kind of terrified me a lot, you know?
Right.
So I don't know. I know what you're saying, that like you're a grown ass man, you know, you shouldn't be scared of movies, and anybody who's an adult shouldn't be scared of movies. I agree. But I think there's the kid in me can still be scared, and I think the kid in me is still very prevalent in my life.
Sure.
And I think in that way I can still be very scared of certain horror films. And I think Tim Curry, man, I watched this when I rewatched this last time. My mother joined me.
Oh, nice.
You know, she had remembered watching it right after she got married with my dad, and they watched it. I think the back-to-back nights or whatever. I think it was like maybe a 1-day break between the two. I don't really remember. But she said she remembered really, really liking it. And this past time watching it, she was like, man, Tim Curry is just so freaking scary in that movie. She's like, the whole, oh, I'm going to give you a present, Georgie boy. She was like, oh, man. She was like, he is absolutely, she's like, I was nervous going to work today. I was like, you know, driving in the middle of the road, didn't want to go near any sewer, you know, things. Right. But, I you know, it affected her, and she's Jesus Christ, you know. But it's like, I don't know. I think you could still be scared at our age or older or whatever. I think it's the kid in you that is scared, though. And I think if the kid in you is still prevalent, I think you could totally be scared.
Yeah, I guess, you know, thinking about it, I think that it's not the movies that are scary. It's our minds. You know, the more you think about it, you know what I mean? Like, for instance, if you're watching Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer or something like that, you know what I mean? You think, well, this, you know, the movie's weird and you know, I'm not scared of the movie. I'm scared about the fact that there could be somebody out there like that. And I think it's, you know, it's our minds that really make us scared. You know what I mean? Like, you know,
it starts going. It starts the ball.
Right. And listen, I love a good jump scare as much as the next guy. I really do. I mean, people say, "Oh, they're all jump scare." Well, I love that shit. I mean, that's really the only thing that gets me during a movie anymore. You know what I mean? Unless it's really graphically, you know, sexually violent or something like that. But, you know, jump scares are really the only thing I have anymore. You know what I mean? So it's you know, for me, I don't mind a jump scare at all, man. And I heard there's a ton of them in this new movie. So I'm excited to see that. And I'm really excited to see this movie with a crowd. How about you?
Yeah, that's going to be that. I'm definitely, because I've honestly not been to a movie that has been released new since August of last year. I saw, oh God, what was the name of it? Don't Breathe.
Oh, okay.
That was the last movie I saw in the theaters.
Did you see it with Will?
That was not like retroly released.
Yeah. Did you see that with Will?
Yes, I did.
Cool. Anybody who listens to us on a regular basis, that's one of our regular people that join us, Will Halstead. So they went and checked that out together. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen a good horror movie at the theater, especially with a good crowd, because usually, since my family is not horror fans, I usually go by myself on a day that, you know what I mean, in the middle of the day or something like that. So I don't usually get to see it with a big crowd, but I talk them into going to this one. So I'll probably be watching them more than I am the movie, because they're a bunch of scaredy cats. So that ought to be interesting. But so obviously, you know, we both think that Pennywise, you know, Tim Curry's portrayal of Pennywise is fantastic, and he really makes the movie. Again, I love the other actors and the kid actors, the adult. But if you're going to watch this movie for anything, if you only pick one thing, watch it for Pennywise. That's for damn sure.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Did you feel? I did feel this the last time I went back and watched it. Do you think he's in it much in the second half at all?
No.
I think that's what's so maybe why people really dislike the second half, and I'm kind of with those people. The second half of this movie, I don't know, man. I don't think it aged well at all. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that because they probably felt like they had to show that these people were coming back together and all the things that they've been through and things like that, they left it out. And yeah, man, I totally agree. I feel like the last half of this movie would have been 10 times better if it was more Pennywise. And that's what I was saying, man. If they would have shown more of, you know, him terrorizing them as kids or even as adults. I mean, then it probably would have been even better received. I mean, this movie gets 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, which that's pretty amazing. But I think it could have been even better if they would have used him a little bit more. And when they did use him in the second half, it wasn't as theatrical, I would say. You know what I mean? Where he could really play. He could dance around and play off of. So that probably adds to it too, I think.
Yeah, I like the scenes with him in the graves and saying
Absolutely.
like, "Oh, the first one's already taken," and
Yep.
it's his brother Georgie.
Oh man,
For all those years, I mean, that is just so. Oh man, that's just salt, in the wound.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, yeah.
I love how he's just such an asshole about the
Right.
stuff that he just. He's taunting them so bad, and I love it. I just think it didn't. I think the payoff of the second half was not strong because the antagonist you were following for the first, 3/4 of this movie is now this giant spider crab like thing. Like what? Like why did that doesn't make any? That would be like Michael Myers, or Freddy Krueger all the way up, and then at the end he's just some big goddamn monster.
Right,
like what?
right.
Well, I know that's how it was done in the novel, but I don't know, man. That's one of those things that they should have changed. Because I just think like watching it back this last time was just painful. I was like, man, what the hell were they thinking?
Right. Well, listen, I think that, that kind of goes back to what I was saying before about how they chose not to show him in all of his iterations. You know what I mean? So I think that if they would have, first of all, if they would have done that, it wouldn't have been as good a movie. But if they would have done that, and then at the end he was a giant spider or whatever it was, then it wouldn't have been as big a deal. You know what I'm saying? But since he was Pennywise throughout the whole movie, and then all of a sudden he's some kind of giant cosmic spider or whatever that thing was, it didn't work. And you're like, I just sat through all that to see that. It seemed like a
payoff. You never see Pennywise get his demise. And to me, it's just like a big spider thing is killed. Like what? Like what?
Do you think maybe they ran out of money?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, no, because you said the budget was how much? 13 million?
12 million, yeah.
12 million. Okay. You had $12 million. You had the money to make a prosthetic spider.
Right.
So I don't know, like maybe the only thing I can think of is maybe Tim Curry was obligated to do something else and was only available for so many days, and for some reason the ending, he couldn't be there. I don't know. This is just speculation to everybody who's just listening.
Right.
Because I've always wondered, but apparently this is, and I've heard some funny things about the ending of this movie. Tommy Lee Wallace himself is not a fan of it.
Really?
He's not a fan of the second part of this movie at all. He's gone on to say that like it is one of the most, disappointing payoffs to a great first half ever. And I agree with him. I think it really is. And if the movie's own director can say that, I think that speaks the loudest of volumes.
Yeah, it sounds to me then that ABC had a little too much to do with it. You know what I mean? They had their fingers in it too much. Which
I think the thing is with King's novel, that's how it ended. And I think either ABC or Tommy Lee Wallace were saying we got to stick to it. And all these Stephen King loyalists, and I respect to them. I'm not saying any disrespect, but there are a lot of times where I think they change things in Stephen King's films, and they make them a lot better. I don't care what like The Mist. That ending Stephen King himself said was better than his book. You know what I mean? Right. And then there are movies like The Shining where he'll tell you it wasn't better than his book, but I beg to disagree. Because that was just Kubrick and Nicholson doing their thing and knocking this awesome ghost movie in this hotel out of the park. I mean, there are a lot of times I could think of more than a few that they made a change to his novel in the film adaptation that ended up making it that much more impactful and powerful. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I totally agree. I think that, Stephen King's novels are very, very, very hard to adapt. I think. I think it's just the way it is. And very few of them are. Well, I don't want to say very few of them, but a lot of them I don't even like. I mean, there are a few that I enjoy, like the Langoliers. You and I talked about. Obviously, Salem's Lot and The Shining and this I enjoy, but like the Tommy Knockers. I mean, there was just a few of them, and I just feel that it's very hard to do well. I mean, I feel like it's not something that's easy to do, and if you don't pick the right people to do it, it just isn't going to work. You know what I mean?
Have you ever seen, just getting off topic really quick here with just the Stephen King, have you ever seen Dreamcatcher?
Man, I remember watching it when it came out, but I don't remember enjoying it very much. Did you like it?
No, I hated it.
Okay.
It's one of those movies, the first 10, 15 minutes, you're like, oh my God, this is going to be like another, because it goes back to when they were kids, and I was like, oh my God, this is going to be like It or Stand By Me. And then what it becomes is just absolutely mind-boggling. Like how stupid it becomes.
Really?
It ends up becoming like this movie where these worms go up your ass and.
Oh my gosh! Whoa.
It's one of the most horrible goddamn Stephen King adaptations ever. But it's got a really good cast in it. It's got an amazing. I forget who exactly was in it, but I remember it having a really really solid cast. But just after the first few minutes, Morgan Freeman, Thomas Jane, Jason Lee, Timothy Olyphant, Donnie Wahlberg. You had some actors that were known. And it's honestly one of the top 5 worst Stephen King adaptations for sure.
Yeah, like I said, I remember watching. I don't even know if I sat down and watched the whole thing. That's what I mean. It was one of those kind of situations. It kind of left my mind as soon as it hit there. So, but yeah, Stephen King. Like I said, I just think it's hard. You know what I mean? I mean, you see his books. The Stand was like a 1,300 page book, you know what I mean? So it's hard to do that in, even in a miniseries, you know what I mean? So I think they just definitely have to pick the right guy to do it, or it's just not going to work. And the cast has to be, you know what I mean? The cast has to be good. But even if the cast is good, like you said, in that Dreamcatcher, that sounded like a pretty damn good cast, and they couldn't pull it off with that. I remember it being a big deal when it came out, but then it just kind of fell off the wayside, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that's just completely, after the first 20 minutes, it falls apart. This movie, the last 20 minutes, it falls apart, but this movie, the 20 minutes are great, and then the rest of the 2.5 hours are just, oh my God, it is really a bad film.
Yeah. Getting back to Tim Curry, playing him, I know that, like they say, I feel like, okay, I was thinking about this earlier, and I feel like Tim Curry as Pennywise did a better job of what they were attempting to do than and I love Robert Englund, but in the later films, what Robert Englund was trying to do, or they were trying to do with Robert Englund in the Freddy movies. You know what I mean? Because Freddy became, like you would roll your eyes or whatever when he said something, you know what I mean? But I felt like Tim Curry and his lines in this movie, I don't know if it was the lines themselves and the way he did it, but when he delivered lines, they were scary. You know what I mean? They were funny, but yet they were scary at the same time. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things I liked.
It very scary, man.
Yeah, that's one of the things I liked about how he delivered the lines. And he would always end, after trying to be funny with things like like when he said to Georgie, and when you're down here, you'll float too, and or when he said, I'm everything you ever were afraid of. That shit was. He always ended it with something after he was funny. You know what I mean? And I thought that's what really worked for him. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go back to that. But that's one of the things I thought of Freddy when I thought of Pennywise, and I really prefer Pennywise over Freddy. Even early Freddy, I prefer Pennywise over early Freddy.
Oh wow, I don't know if I could say that.
Yeah.
I love Tim Curry as Pennywise, but no, I don't know if I could agree with that. Freddy Krueger is creme de la creme, but. I think what's amazing, what I can agree with is the memorability. It is such a memorable character. Yeah. I mean, it's like even before this remake was even talked about, you always see memes of Pennywise. You always see it. It's always that character, the facial expressions. I mean, it's as memorable and as I don't think it's as iconic because it's only one movie.
Right.
And I also think he's not in the second one, and you never see the demise. It's almost like this great horror character that had no payoff, like Frankenstein and going back to the 30s and Bride of Frankenstein. That's one of my favorite, destructions of a character of all time. I mean, he commits his own demise where he says, you guys go free, we belong dead, and he pulls that trigger, he pulls that lever, and the whole castle blows up.
Right.
I mean, that's just great stuff. That's a great character demise where this guy knew he was so unaccepted by society, and he was so terrifying to people that he said, you know what, I'm going to end up causing more, even though I don't mean to, I'm going to end up causing more havoc and destruction if I survive. So I'm going to just do myself in and save the world, pain and misery. And I think that's a great demise for a horror character, Boris Karloff in Bride of Frankenstein. But I think it really does bother me to this day that Pennywise doesn't get the proper send off, like the memorable kill. Like maybe they didn't shoot him in the heart, they end up shooting the spider thing in the heart. Like what? Right.
It was like two different, entities. You know what I mean? Like one really didn't. It seemed like one really didn't have anything to do with the other. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. It just felt like a different movie at that point.
Yeah. And I know that they say that Tim Curry, when he was originally approached to do this movie, he didn't really want to do it because he didn't want to be under all the makeup. You know what I mean? He didn't really want to do that because
understandable.
Yeah, because he was in, I don't know if you remember the movie Legend. He was in the movie Legend. He played Darkness, and there was a lot of makeup involved in that, and he hated it, so he wasn't sure. So they decided to not do so much makeup. You know what I mean? Tommy Lee Wallace said, "Look, we'll minimize the amount that we put on you, and we'll make it a lot easier on you." And to be honest with you, like I was saying before, when he moved, the way he moved his mouth and he moved his face, and he didn't really need any of them. You know what I mean? So I think that they were willing to work with Tim Curry on this character probably made him want to do it even more and do a better job at it. And I mean, I would understand. I wouldn't want to sit. I remember them talking about when they did up Jason, and Freddy, they would sit in the chair for 6 or 8 hours before they would even start shooting. And oh my God, I could not imagine that. Could you?
Oh my God, never. I could never. That's why when people say, "Oh, those guys aren't," yes, they are. They have to go sit through that every day and then go perform. Yeah. It's not like, oh, you got to sit through 6 or to 8 hours of makeup and then you're done for the day. No, you have to go perform it and kill this performance and be terrifying to children and be memorable. And they both did it.
Right.
It's a testament to how great those two are. And if people want to be ignorant and say, it's not that big of it, you go screw yourself.
Right.
You're a completely ignorant bastard.
Right. Yeah. Another thing I wanted to talk about, which I found really interesting when I was looking, at the history of this movie, is, and this is really off the cuff here, but it's something I just thought about when they talk about when the character of Henry, he's giving him a hard time, and he had to call Marlon Taylor the N-word. They talked about how he didn't want to do it. You know what I mean? And he kept apologizing to him. And I thought, man, that he must be a pretty good actor, because I thought that dude was a dick. You know what I mean? It seemed like he enjoyed doing that character, but I thought that was pretty interesting. I think that's the kind of little things in this movie that make these kids much more interesting. I mean, even Tommy Lee Wallace said the same thing that you were saying earlier about how the second half of the movie isn't as engaging because the kids really had the chemistry. You know what I mean? And I think,
exactly.
I think that part of that is that because, kids, they look at things a lot differently than adults. You know what I mean? The adults are more like I am now. You know what I mean? But the kids were, they truly could have been scared at what they were doing, even though they knew they were doing a movie. You know what I'm saying? So they had to band together and say, we got to get through this together. And I don't know. I just find that the movie making process is pretty awesome. You know what I mean? The things that people go through for a 2 or 3 month period with each other. And this movie, especially with these kids, really solidifies my idea of what these people have to go through. And the fact that some people say, oh, actors got it easy, and they do make a lot of money and all that kind of stuff, but they still have to do the job, and they have to do it every day. You know what I mean? And they have to bring it every day. And I don't know. I just find that super interesting.
Yeah, I think it's the innocence of a child that really because you would think, this killer clown, and it could take the shape of whatever you're afraid of, and I'm gonna kill you all, or and whatnot. It's that's why it's so powerful. Is because the fear on those kids' faces feels so real, and it's so buyable because they are so innocent. They're just kids, man. They're trying to have fun in the woods and everything like that. But like there are scenes where Pennywise takes the shape of Ben's dad, who's passed away, who's in the was it the army or
army?
He was in the army. He was killed in the army. He's standing on this like pond with like these balloons, and he's like, "Hey, son," and he's just waving. Yeah, and then all of a sudden it becomes Pennywise, and he just like covers his mouth. He's like, "Oh," laughing at him, and like Ben's face of amazement is just like he's like, "Oh my god," and scenes where they these two bullies chase Ben down by, I guess, this kind of hideout place they all had, the Losers Club. Yeah. He like kind of hides in like this pipe, and these two bullies run up to Bill, and they're like, "Did you see a fat kid run by here?" And he's like, "No." And he comes out, he's like, "Thanks for covering for me, man." And he's like, "Oh yeah, no problem." And then I think one of the characters, he needs his inhaler. And Bill says, "Watch after him. I'm gonna go get his medicine." And like just stuff like that. It's like I know a lot of people. Oh, that's important, but like yes, it is, because it makes you go, what a good friend, man. This kid is gonna go run and get his friend who has asthma, or well, I guess he thought he had asthma. He didn't really have it. He's going to get his medicine, and because he covered for him, he's going to stay and watch him. And I just love I think the kid actors just do such a genuine, amazing job with that innocence role and with that fantasy role. I think they really, it felt more real when they were going in to face Pennywise than when the adult versions of them were going in to face Pennywise. It felt more epic, even though this was only the first part of the movie. I think actually the next time I watch this, I think I'm only going to watch the first part, because I think that's the more memorable part. And I've heard that with this remake, that's what they're going to do. They're not going to do it when they're adults. They're going to be just children throughout the entire movie. And I think if that's what they do, I think it will really, really work.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard that this first movie it doesn't show them as adults at all. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. I also read that this is just real quick as you were talking. I read that Alice Cooper was considered for the role of Pennywise.
Wow, that would have never worked.
Yeah, right. Remember,
it didn't work when he was Mr. Krueger's dad or whatnot, and it wouldn't have worked with this.
What was the movie, the Carpenter movie he was in? Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on the name of it. Where he was one of the zombies outside. Oh my god. Yeah, I'm drawing.
Oh my god, I don't know either.
Prince of Darkness. Prince of Darkness.
Oh yeah, there you go.
That would have driven me crazy. Yeah, anyway, sorry. But yeah, I do believe that the new one totally focuses on them as a child, and the second one is going to be about later on. So I actually hope that's the case. And I don't know if you noticed, did you notice that there's a guard in the asylum that Harry Bauer's character is in later on as an adult? And they named him after Dean Koontz, who's kind of like Stephen King's rival author.
I didn't know that, no.
Yeah, I knew his name was Koontz, but I didn't know it had anything to do with Dean Koontz. Are you familiar with Dean Koontz? I've read a lot.
Yes, I am.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. They were kind of rivals, as I was growing up. So, but anyways, let's talk a little bit about the end of this movie. I know we've already discussed that it's some kind of weird spider or anything like. I don't know. I always thought it was a crab too, but people say it's a spider. Did you think it was a crab, or did you think it was a spider? That's a really weird thing to talk about. Did it really matter?
I would go spider, I guess, if I had to flip the old proverbial coin. I said spider-like crab thing. I don't know. It's the one thing with this movie that I think stinks. Yeah. Like, I'm like, God damn! Like, it's the reason why I can't say 10 out of 10, and it bothers me because it stops it from being a really perfect horror movie.
Yeah, I agree. So what would you give this movie out of 10? Would you give it a 9?
No, I would not give it a 9.
Yeah,
I would probably go with a 7.
Yep, I think we're in agreement there. Yeah, this movie, it's definitely worth seeing, and anybody who has not seen this movie needs to go check it out so they can form their own opinion. Don't listen to the people online for damn sure, because a lot of those people don't know what they're talking about. Not that, I feel like we have any kind of real super, insight into this movie, but I think it means something different to both of us, but we both give it a 7, you know what I mean? So the first part, if we did it by part, the first part would be a 10 out of 10 for me, and the second part would probably be a 5 or a 6 out of 10. So that's where I agree
100%. Yeah, I agree.
That's kind of where I get my 7 from. But I think, like I said, I think overall this movie is a really good movie, especially for people my age, not necessarily, literally my age. I mean, as you get older, the nostalgia obviously is gonna make this movie a little bit more interesting and a little bit better. Because it reminds you of your childhood, and even your age, you can remember what it's like being 10 or 12 years old and hanging out with your friends and thinking that house over there is haunted, and they were telling me about that thing over there so we all go through this a little bit. Obviously, in this situation, it ended up being real and something that they had to battle. And I think that as a child, I think that's really that's what really interests us. You know what I mean? We want to do something like this in our heads. You know what I mean? We probably don't really want to, but we all want to battle the bully or go in the ghost house, the haunted house, and see the ghosts. You know what I mean, and things like that. So I think that that's part of what brings this movie to the psyche of the people who really enjoy it, is that we all want to battle something, we all want to be scared, and we all want to win in the end. And even though they win in the end, the end's not great, they do win in the end. So I think that's part of what makes me like this movie. What about you?
I agree 100%. I think I'd even go a step further with saying with it. I would say Stand By Me. Absolutely. Which came out a few years before this. I even would consider what you just said even more with that movie. Oh, yeah. And not to say this movie has a lot of that too, especially obviously the first half. But there's a line in Stand By Me that I always found to be one of the great lines in movie history. And they say, I believe the character Will Wheaton's character says, sometimes your best friends when you're in an early grade just end up becoming another face in the hallway. And like that is so true. Like that is one of the wisest things I've ever heard. Yep. Because it really is true. I mean, there are so few people that I was friends with, even the beginning grades of my life, whatever, first grade, second grade, third grade, that I'm friends with to this day. Eventually they can become faces in the hallway that you don't even bother to say hello to them. And I think that kind of primitive is really hits home to me, because there's a lot of times that's happened to me, even though I'm still young, but I love channeling that inner, even though it was only, 5 to 7 years ago for me when I still could be considered a kid. That like just the great conversations, the adventures, the innocence, the clubs, the whatnot. Yep. It's magical. I think Stephen King's It really, really has that magic that Stand By Me has. Maybe not as strong of a magic, but it's definitely there. Yes. And I think all these kids just had such good chemistry. It was a time too. You got to remember a time that horror was really starting to run dead. It was starting to run, tired. And I think that first half really holds up. And dare I say it, it doesn't even feel really 90s to me. It feels more, I think, like mid 80s.
Yes, I agree.
The first part for sure. The second part feels 90s, but the first part feels 80s.
Right. Yeah, talking about the things that these movies do for us. And we didn't get into this, and I want to do that before we end here. Is I did actually watch a movie. I know you and I were talking, and I said I hadn't watched a movie, but I did watch a movie with my family last Sunday, and that was The Goonies.
Oh, love it!
Yeah, you know what I mean. It's the same thing. You know what I mean. These kids get together, and they run away from their parents and they go do something they're not supposed to do. You know what I mean? And I think that's why we love those movies, man, especially the 80s ones for some particular reason. And for me, I'm sure it's just nostalgia, but I'm not, I know people from this generation love, E.T. and the Goonies and those, the Lost Boys. So I don't know. Those movies hold a special place in my heart for sure. And definitely Stand By Me is in that way, probably on the top of that conversation. But I agree with you, the fact that this movie is a very similar to Stand By Me at the beginning of, and I think that's part of the reason that I love it so much.
Totally, man.
Sure.
So we recommend it to everybody.
No doubt.
I think you all should watch it before you go see the remake. Regardless of, I've heard a lot of people be saying that it's better than the original movie.
Yeah,
I don't know how I'm going to feel about that.
Right.
I don't think there's a single remake that I like better than the original movie, so this would be the first one.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm excited to see it tonight.
Me too.
And I have high hopes. I'm optimistic. I think I will say this before I go in, and I have not read anything about the performance. I'm really putting a lot of pressure on Mr. Bill Skarsgård, the man who's portraying Pennywise. He looks terrifying in the trailers. I've yet to hear him say anything, though.
Exactly.
So I hope his performance can be good. I don't think it's going to be nearly as good as Tim Curry's. I'll say that right now. I think that's next to impossible to do. Right. But we will see later on.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Me too. I'm excited. I don't think that he can match it, but he might not need to, and I hope that's the case. So, anyways, we didn't talk about what you watched this week. What did you check out? Did you check out anything?
This is a good curveball. We'll end with what we watched.
Yeah.
I had the pleasure, whatnot, to watch the Scream Factory release of John Carpenter's Elvis.
Really?
I watched the Elvis Presley movie biopic starring Kurt Russell. Me and my grandmother actually sat down and watched this one. I got it a few weeks ago, and she's a huge Elvis fan, as am I. And we sat down. It's pretty much not a miniseries, but it was just a really long TV movie, like over 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
And it was fantastic, man. I swear, like, it may be Kurt Russell's best performance.
Really? I'm gonna have to check it out. I've always wanted to, but is it a Shout Select? Is that what it is? Shout Select?
I'm not sure. I know it does not go for much money. Like, you can get it. I think you can get the DVD for like $10,
nice.
And the Blu-ray for like $15. Like, it's not an expensive movie to buy. And dude, I promise you, if you're an Elvis, I don't know if you're an Elvis fan,
sure. But
if you are in any way, shape, or form, I'd say buy it, because it's a really, really, really good movie.
Yeah, I've never seen it. How can you not like Carpenter and Russell together again? So yeah, I'm definitely gonna. I didn't even know it came out, to be honest with you. That's very interesting. I'm gonna have to check it out.
It has a great cast too. You got like Shelley Winters is in it, playing his mother. Bing Russell, who's Kurt Russell's real life father, is in it playing Elvis's father. Joe Mantegna's in it. Charles Cyphers from the sheriff, Sheriff Brackett from Halloween. Yeah. He made this right after he made Halloween, so there are a few people from Halloween that are in there. And Charles Cyphers actually has a decent enough role in it, which I really like to see him in something else. Especially because he looked exactly the same, because it's the same time.
Right.
It just changed his hair a little bit. But it was just, I don't know. I really, really enjoyed it. I liked the history of Elvis. And I also liked, it's the only biopic I know of that doesn't get into the person's death. It completely it focuses on the negative aspects of his life, but it doesn't get into the drug use, the stuff that depresses us. Like, as much as I'm a huge Doors fan, I love Jim Morrison, but something I felt that Oliver Stone focused a little bit too much on with Doors movie was that it was almost like that was all he was. And granted, I'm sure it was a big part of his life. But I don't know. I would have liked to have known more about the guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, they seemed to start that way, and then towards the end, it was like, oh well, there's no guy here anymore. He's just a drug addict. Right. And it's like, I understand that that's probably a real portrayal, but as a fan, I kind of wanted to see a little bit more towards the end. And have you ever seen this? This would be a great thing to talk about, because it is horrifying.
What's that?
It's called Wired. And it's the biopic for John Belushi.
Oh, no, I've never seen it.
Never? Okay. You are a very fortunate person to have never seen this movie, because it is the worst single biopic I've ever seen. It's called Wired.
Huh.
I believe it's from the late 80s. Yeah, I want to say mid to late 80s.
Huh.
And it stars a very good actor, Michael Chiklis,
Oh, wow.
playing John Belushi. Now, when I heard about this, I was like, I have to see this now. So I went out and I found a bootleg copy at a convention. I was at a horror convention. I actually had a bootleg copy of it. But I don't have it anymore. I would send it to you to watch, but I threw it out because I was in a fit of rage. I broke the disc in half and threw it out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The movie is basically about John Belushi post-death. He wakes up in a morgue in a body bag, unzips himself, starts running around the place, and keeps telling people that he's actually alive. He's like a dead corpse running around, and then they give them flashbacks of his life, and he's on the beach doing drugs, and there's a really weird scene involving a samurai sword, and I don't want to ruin it because it is so bad, and it has to be seen to be believed. But dude, it is the most. They make John Belushi out to be like he was the absolute worst person, and that he wasn't funny and didn't contribute anything to the comedy business, and that he was just a low-life cocaine alcoholic. And dude, it is absolutely one of the most depressing movies I've ever seen. It's oh man, they make John Belushi out to be like he was the worst human being that ever walked the planet, and it's just so sad to me. That crazy. They did that. And actually, I know Dan Aykroyd and Belushi's wife, and they asked people to protest to not let the movie be released, because after they heard the premise, they were like, what are you doing, you know? So, yeah, all Belushi's friends protested this movie, and unfortunately it did get released. But
wow, that'd be like making Chris Farley out to be the devil, you know what I mean? That's pretty hard to do.
Exactly. I don't get I understand that he had a substance abuse problem, and sure. I'm not saying that he didn't, but to say that he was a lousy, it would be something like Chris Farley or John Candy. Right. It's you can't. Those guys are just they're the fat, lovable leads in Hollywood, and unfortunately they've both since passed on. But man, that is one of the worst biopics. Wired. If anyone has seen Wired, I would love for somebody to comment or write in, and because I know it, I can't be alone on this, because I know it has a bad rep too. But for going back to Elvis, I think Elvis was one of the best TV movies I've ever seen, and arguably Kurt Russell's best performance. I mean, it was an amazing movie.
Yeah, I actually, while you were talking, I just ordered it, so it should be here Monday, I think, something like that. So,
are you a fan of Elvis at all?
Yeah, I mean, you got to understand, I can't believe I'm going to say this on air. I have an uncle who used to dress up like Elvis and go around and sing. I grew up, singing oldies, 50s and 60s, and music. So yeah, that's very something that was a big part of my childhood, especially. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in checking it out.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I know there's a lot of kids my age that don't get it. They don't get that style of music.
Right.
It's funny because my friend Chris, or no, it was my friend Alec, I'm sorry. He posted something on Facebook yesterday. If you could bring one of these legends back to life, who would it be? Oh, wow. And it was a good variety. I mean, there was Michael Jackson was in there.
Sure.
But the main one that everybody pretty much commented on, of the 20 people that commented on it, was Kurt Cobain. A majority said Kurt Cobain.
Sure.
And I was one of the few people that said Elvis. And people were like, Elvis? What are you, crazy? And I'm like, well, you have to understand that just because you are into the whole grunge era, which I know a lot of people are, and I'm not a big fan, but I know some of my best friends are the biggest Nirvana fans in the world. Right. They're like, Elvis. I'm like, yeah, I'm a fan of it. You know what I mean? It's okay to be a fan of somebody else that's not from the grunge era, and especially I don't know, I just loved everything about Elvis, the accent, the cool,
right.
And how much he loved his mother, and that's really him and Shelley Winters. They share a few really good scenes in John Carpenter's Elvis. Yeah. Shelley Winters and Kurt Russell had amazing chemistry in that movie. That's something that I know you'll totally be a fan of.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about the people of this generation. They need to understand no Elvis, no Nirvana, right? I mean, it's just all there is to it.
Well, yeah, and the same thing. Like, I know I watched Frank Sinatra's HBO documentary not too long back. It was like 4 hours long. It was, Jesus Christ, it was a little too long.
Right.
But he was saying that they asked somebody that was close to him. They were like, "Oh, he hated Elvis when Elvis first came up," and they did a duet together. You can still find the duet too. It's online somewhere.
Right.
Of the two of them singing, and like Frank is being Frank or whatnot, and he starts singing, and then Elvis starts singing second. It's like a duet,
right?
And Elvis goes second, and the girls pop for Frank, but then Elvis starts singing.
Sure.
Oh my! The place shakes.
Right.
And you can see it on Sinatra's face that he's fucking mad. Like he's like, this guy's stealing my thunder. He's stealing my sexual libido, man.
Right,
and
right.
it's like, it's funny because that's totally how Frank Sinatra felt. And
right.
I don't know. I'm not a big Frank Sinatra fan as a person, especially after watching that documentary.
Sure.
Like I feel like he came off as kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
But yeah, people got to understand that music adapts.
Absolutely.
Like and as much as I go for music too in the 70s and 80s, and even I go even late 60s, I'm a big fan of all that stuff. Janis Joplin, Cream, Eric Clapton, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, the Doors, you name it from that time. I'm a big fan. And then even getting into the harder stuff of the 80s, I love.
Oh, yeah.
But it's I think what's so big about Kurt Cobain with kids my age is that he kind of changed music.
Sure,
and,
absolutely.
And I think a lot of kids my age look at him as like a symbol of greatness. And like I don't know if I agree with that because I don't really look at him as a symbol of greatness. But same thing. People would say to me, "Oh, you like Jim Morrison?" So he was the Kurt Cobain of his time, sure. I guess. So I tell them no Cobain without Morrison.
That's right. So. Well, I'm just not sure that he was around long enough to be. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not saying he wasn't great, but he definitely would have solidified himself if he would have stuck around a little bit longer. You know what I mean?
Which guy, Morrison or Cobain?
Cobain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I mean? I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah, it's hard to put him up there. I mean, listen. I'm not arguing about his. I think he's fantastic. I like Nirvana. I enjoy the music. I'm just not sure that he should be in the same breath as somebody like the Beatles or Elvis or somebody like that. But I mean, to each his own. I mean, like I said, I enjoy their music a lot. So I don't know, just old school, I guess.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm not. I respect Cobain and I respect what he did to music, but I'm just not the biggest diehard fan.
Sure, absolutely. Did you watch anything else?
Yes, I watched a really, really good Twilight Zone called Mirror Image, and it's starring Vera Miles, and I think it's right before she was in Psycho.
Oh, nice.
Or right around the same time. So it was cool because she had the same exact look. And it's basically about this woman who's she's ready to go home. She's ready to take, and I thought it was interesting. It took place in New York. I think she's trying to get the Binghamton bus home, which is really far upstate New York. So I was like, oh, cool, Yeah. And it's like this dark, stormy, rainy night, and she's kind of sitting in this bus terminal waiting for her bus to come, and it's very quiet in there. And she walks up to this teller and she goes, when is the bus supposed to come in? And the guy says to her, you just asked me that a few minutes ago. I told you it'll get here when it gets here. And it's super creepy because you start thinking, like, what is going on? Like, is this woman going crazy? Right. And then she starts seeing, like, a duplicate of herself. Like, she goes to the bathroom and then somebody opens the door, and in the reflection in the mirror sitting on the bench, she sees herself. And it's just, dude, man, it is hard done right. It is some scary ass shit. Like her bag keeps getting moved, and you don't know whether she's going crazy or whatnot. And then there's this guy that comes in to try to help her, and I mean, it's a really, really good episode of The Twilight Zone. Really scary stuff, and I totally recommend if it's on one of the volumes you got. I would recommend watching it because it's really good. Yeah,
I was just gonna say I got collection 2 and 3, I think, of that series. 70 some hours of. And I got a long weekend next weekend, so I was thinking about sitting down and watching Disc 11, which is one of the discs that you recommended to me. But I'll have to see if that one's in there too. I'm not sure. What's it called again?
Mirror Image.
Mirror Image. Yeah, maybe that might be in there. I'll have to check that one out too. Got to write it down here. All right, man. Anything else?
No, that is it, my man. Great show.
Yeah, I know we got it coming up tonight. We'll have a lot to talk about next episode, and I think we're gonna do. We kind of come up with an idea about doing some slasher films, maybe our top 10, but we'll do them as individuals or something like that. But John came up with the moniker of slasher sods, so I think maybe we're going to do that. I know you and I'll talk about it in the interim, but I'm looking.
Or we could call it. We could call it the Slashback Horror Movie Podcast.
Oh, there you go. Nice. I like that. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Obviously, I'm a huge slasher guy, so looking forward to talking about some slashers. So, if there's nothing else, man, I hope you have a good weekend and stay out of trouble, man.
Yeah, you too. Enjoy it tonight, or at least try to. And I got my Pennywise shirt already.
Nice.
They all float down here. He's got him and the balloons.
Lovely.
I'm super excited.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I'm really excited to go tonight because It's been a long time since I've seen a new movie in the theaters. It's been over a year,
I know, yeah,
which is pretty sick because I love movies.
Me too. Yeah, man. Hey, I'll text you. Text me. Let me know what you thought, and I'll text you and let you know.
Sounds great, man.
All right, brother. Take it easy. Have a good weekend, and like I said, stay out of trouble.
Catch you out of the flip side, bro.
All right. Peace.
Peace.